Red and blue lights sliced through the pouring rain, trapping the sleek Mercedes in their glare. Officer Mercer smiled, convinced he'd caught a thief. He had no idea the quiet black man sitting behind the wheel was about to dismantle his entire career with a single devastating phone call. The unrelenting Virginia rain drummed a heavy hypnotic rhythm against the roof of the obsidian black Mercedes-Benz S580. Inside the hushed, climate-controlled cabin, Marcus Hale enjoyed the quiet isolation. In his early 60s, Marcus was a man who appreciated silence. For decades, his life had been filled with the endless noise of courtrooms, the sharp debates of legal scholars, and the heavy gavel strikes that shaped the laws of the state. Marcus was the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. Tonight, however, he was simply a tired man heading home to Richmond after a solitary weekend of fly fishing in the Shenandoah Valley. He had intentionally left his official state vehicle, the one with the specialized judicial license plates, at home, opting instead to take his wife's brand new birthday present for a spin to stretch its engine. Dressed in a faded gray Howard University sweatshirt, comfortable denim jeans, and a pair of worn-out boots, Marcus looked nothing like the formidable legal titan who commanded the highest bench in the state. He looked like an ordinary civilian. To the wrong eyes, he looked like a target. As Marcus merged onto a desolate stretch of Route 60, passing into the jurisdiction of Brimley County, he noticed the headlights in his rearview mirror. They were keeping pace, lingering in his blind spot with the predatory patience of a shark. Marcus's hands resting lightly on the leather-wrapped steering wheel tightened by a fraction of an inch. He didn't need to look at the speedometer. He had set the cruise control to exactly the legal limit. He hadn't drifted. He hadn't braked erratically. Yet, the deep-seated instincts forged by decades of living as a black man in America flared to life. A short distance later, the headlights suddenly erupted into a blinding frenzy of red and blue flashes. The harsh siren chirped, cutting through the sound of the rain. Marcus let out a slow, measured breath. He activated his turn signal, pulled onto the muddy shoulder of the highway, placed the vehicle in park, and turned off the engine. With practiced precision, he rolled down his window, turned on the interior dome light, and placed both hands firmly at the 12-0-0 position on the steering wheel. He knew the drill. It didn't matter how many degrees hung on his wall or how much power he wielded in the state capitol. In the dark on the side of a lonely highway, he was entirely at the mercy of whoever stepped out of that cruiser. Behind the Mercedes, Officer Harlan Mercer killed the siren and grinned. Mercer was a veteran officer of the Brimley County Sheriff's Department, a man whose career was built on aggressive traffic stops and a highly selective interpretation of the law. He had a reputation in the precinct, one that the old boys network protected and the younger officers quietly feared. Sitting in the passenger seat was Officer Jasper Reed, a recent academy graduate. "Look at this, Reed," Mercer sneered, unbuckling his duty belt. "Brand new S-Class, dealer tag still on the back window, and take a wild guess at who's driving it." Reed peered through the rain-streaked windshield. "I can't really see, sir." "I can," Mercer said, his voice dripping with condescension. "A man in a hoodie, out here late at night. That car is worth a fortune. You think a guy dressed like he's about to mow a lawn bought that legally?" "Maybe it's a rental, sir," Reed offered hesitantly. "Or maybe he just owns it. The plates haven't come back stolen on the computer." "The system is slow," Mercer retorted, grabbing his heavy maglite. "And I know a thief when I see one. Watch and learn, rookie. We're going to get a felony drug bust or a grand theft auto out of this one tonight." Mercer stepped out into the downpour, his heavy boots splashing in the puddles. He didn't approach immediately. He played the psychological game, taking his time, making the driver wait and sweat. He touched the trunk of the Mercedes to leave a fingerprint, a standard procedure, and then stepped up to the driver's side window. Without a word of greeting, Mercer shined the blinding beam of the maglite directly into Marcus's eyes. Marcus blinked against the harsh glare, but kept his posture relaxed, his hands clearly visible. "Good evening, officer," Marcus said, his voice a deep, calm baritone. "License, registration, and proof of insurance," Mercer barked, completely ignoring the greeting. He kept the flashlight trained aggressively on Marcus's face. "And take it out slow." "Of course," Marcus replied politely. "My wallet is in my right back pocket. I'm going to reach for it now." Marcus slowly reached behind him, retrieving his leather wallet. He pulled out his standard state driver's license. It didn't list his title. It simply read Marcus Thomas Hale. He then reached into the glove compartment, retrieving the registration and insurance documents, and handed them through the window. Mercer snatched the paperwork. He looked at the license, then at the registration, and then back at Marcus. He lowered the flashlight slightly, just enough for Marcus to see the contempt twisting the officer's features. "Richmond address," Mercer noted, eyeing the affluent zip code listed on the registration. "This is a very expensive neighborhood, Marcus. You're doing some late-night landscaping over there?" The microaggression hung heavily in the damp air. Marcus's eyes, sharp and analytical, met Mercer's gaze. He was intimately familiar with men like Mercer. He had prosecuted them in his youth, and he had upheld their dismissals from the bench. Marcus recognized the dangerous combination of uniform-granted authority and deep-seated prejudice. "I live there, officer," Marcus stated, his tone remaining perfectly neutral. Mercer scoffed, a short, ugly sound. "Right, and I'm the King of England. Whose car is this, Marcus? Tell me the truth and I might go easy on you. Did your boss lend it to you, or did you find the keys lying around?" "The vehicle is registered to my wife and myself, as the document in your hand clearly indicates," Marcus replied, his voice firming slightly. "Now, officer, as I have complied with your request for identification, may I ask why I was pulled over?" Mercer bristled. He hated when they talked back. He hated the articulate, unbothered cadence of Marcus's voice. It felt like a challenge to his authority. "You swerved," Mercer lied smoothly. "Failure to maintain your lane. That's reasonable suspicion of driving under the influence." "I see," Marcus said softly. He knew for a fact he hadn't swerved. He also knew that precedent gave law enforcement broad leeway to use minor traffic violations as a pretext for a stop, but a lie was a lie. "I apologize if it appeared that way. It is quite rainy tonight. If you are issuing a citation, I am ready to sign it, so I may be on my way." "You'll be on your way when I say you're on your way," Mercer snapped, stepping back from the window. "Keep your hands on the wheel. Don't move." Mercer stomped back to his cruiser, completely soaked and utterly furious. "What is it, sir?" Reed asked as Mercer slammed the cruiser door shut. "Is he suspended? Warrants?" "Nothing," Mercer growled, violently typing Marcus's name into the mobile data terminal. "Clean record. Not even a parking ticket. But he's lying. Guys like him don't drive cars like that. And they sure as hell don't talk to me with that kind of attitude." "Sir, if his license is clean and the car isn't stolen, shouldn't we just write a warning and let him go?" Reed asked, his anxiety rising. "It's pouring out there." Mercer shot the rookie a withering glare. "You want to be a real cop, Reed? You don't let the fish off the hook just because the bait looks clean. He's hiding something. I can smell it. I'm going to toss that car." When Officer Mercer approached the Mercedes for the second time, his demeanor had shifted from condescending to openly aggressive. He didn't just want a ticket anymore. He wanted submission. He wanted to break the quiet dignity that Marcus wore so effortlessly. "Step out of the vehicle," Mercer commanded, placing a hand on the butt of his holstered service weapon. It was an intimidation tactic, plain and simple. Marcus did not immediately move. He looked at the officer, his mind rapidly cataloging the legal parameters of the situation. Under established precedent, a police officer could legally order a driver out of a vehicle during a lawful traffic stop for officer safety. Refusing to step out would be a lawful reason for arrest. Marcus was not going to give Mercer a legitimate excuse to escalate to violence. "May I ask why I am being ordered out of my vehicle in the pouring rain, officer?" Marcus asked, maintaining eye contact. "Because I smell marijuana," Mercer declared loudly, leaning closer to the window, "and that gives me probable cause to search this vehicle. Now step out before I drag you out." Marcus's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He had never smoked marijuana in his life. The interior of his car smelled of premium leather and the faint trace of his wife's vanilla perfume. The smell of marijuana was the oldest, most impossible to disprove lie in a corrupt cop's playbook, a phantom probable cause manufactured to bypass the Fourth Amendment. "I assure you, officer, there is no marijuana in this vehicle," Marcus said, unbuckling his seatbelt slowly so his hands were always visible. "I am stepping out now." Marcus opened the door and stood up. At 6'2", he was taller than Mercer, a fact that seemed to infuriate the officer further. The rain instantly began to soak through Marcus's sweatshirt, chilling him to the bone. Before Marcus could fully close his door, Mercer grabbed him roughly by the shoulder, spinning him around. The officer shoved Marcus chest first against the slick, wet side of the Mercedes. "Spread your legs," Mercer shouted, kicking Marcus's ankles apart with the toe of his heavy boot. Rookie Officer Reed had stepped out of the cruiser now, jogging over to the scene. He stood a few feet away, his eyes wide with alarm. "Hey, Mercer, take it easy," Reed muttered under his breath, though not loud enough to intervene. Mercer aggressively patted Marcus down, his hands unnecessarily rough as he checked the man's pockets and waistband. "Nothing on your person," Mercer muttered, frustrated. "Stay right here, Reed. Watch him. If he twitches, drop him." "Officer," Marcus spoke up, his voice cutting clearly through the sound of the rain, directed not at Mercer, but at the body camera pinned to Mercer's chest. "For the record, I do not consent to a search of my vehicle. You have no factual basis or probable cause to enter my property." Mercer stopped dead in his tracks. He turned around, walking back until he was inches from Marcus's face. "You think you're a lawyer, boy?" Mercer whispered, his breath hot and smelling of stale coffee. "You think watching Law and Order makes you an expert? I am the law out here. I don't need your damn consent." With that, Mercer opened the driver's side door and began to tear the pristine interior apart. Marcus stood silently against his car. the icy rain matting his graying hair to his forehead. He watched with a forced, stoic calm as Mercer ripped the floor mats out, tossing them into the muddy puddles on the highway shoulder. He watched as the officer tore through the center console, violently throwing Marcus's personal items onto the passenger seat. Then, Mercer opened the trunk. Inside the trunk was Marcus's leather briefcase, which contained highly confidential legal briefs for an upcoming Supreme Court ruling on a major state redistricting case. "What do we have here?" Mercer called out, pulling the briefcase out. Without hesitation, he unlatched it and dumped the contents into the trunk. Reams of paper, constitutional analyses, and private judicial notes spilled everywhere. Dissatisfied that it wasn't contraband, Mercer haphazardly shoved the papers back in, crumpling dozens of crucial documents, and tossed the briefcase onto the wet asphalt next to Marcus's feet. The sight of his life's work, the sacred documents of the state's highest court lying in the mud, finally caused a flash of profound anger to ignite in Marcus's chest. But he suppressed it. He was a master of his emotions. Let the officer dig his grave deeper. After an exhaustive search, Mercer emerged from the vehicle empty-handed. His face was flushed red with a mixture of exertion and embarrassment. He had found no drugs, no weapons, no stolen goods. Just a terrified rookie watching him and a preternaturally calm black man standing in the rain. Mercer couldn't back down now. His ego wouldn't allow it. He marched up to Marcus, unholstering his handcuffs. "Put your hands behind your back." "On what charge?" Marcus demanded, his voice dropping an octave, carrying the immense authoritative weight he usually reserved for a chaotic courtroom. The sheer command in Marcus's voice made Mercer flinch for a fraction of a second. But the officer quickly recovered, letting his anger mask his uncertainty. "Resisting arrest and disorderly conduct," Mercer spat out, grabbing Marcus's wrists and yanking them violently behind his back. The cold steel of the cuffs clamped down, ratcheting so tightly they instantly pinched the nerves in Marcus's wrists. "I have done nothing but comply with your physical demands, despite your flagrant violation of my constitutional rights," Marcus stated, wincing slightly as the metal bit into his flesh. "I suggest you think very carefully about your next move, officer." "Are you threatening me?" Mercer yelled, shoving Marcus toward the cruiser. "You're going to jail, pal. People like you think you can drive through my county, flash a fancy car, and act like you own the place. You think you're untouchable. I'm going to teach you exactly how the real world works." Marcus allowed himself to be guided into the back of the freezing hard plastic seat of the police cruiser. He shifted uncomfortably, the tight handcuffs digging into his spine. As Mercer slammed the door shut, locking him in the claustrophobic darkness of the cage, Marcus looked out the rain-streaked window at his beautiful, vandalized car and the ruined legal briefs dissolving in the mud. "The real world," Marcus thought to himself, a cold, calculated fire burning behind his eyes. "I believe that you and I are about to have a very thorough lesson on how the real world works, Officer Mercer." The drive to the Brimley County Sheriff's Department was a masterclass in petty tyranny. Officer Mercer took every sharp turn at maximum speed, deliberately tossing Marcus's unrestrained body against the hard plastic and metal grating of the cruiser's rear compartment. The metal cuffs sliced deeper into Marcus's wrists with every jolt, numbing his fingers and sending sharp ribbons of fire up his forearms. Through all of it, Marcus remained completely silent. His eyes were fixed on the rhythmic swipe of the windshield wipers, his mind actively constructing the legal framework for the absolute dismantling of the man in the front seat. In the passenger seat, Rookie Officer Reed stared straight ahead, chewing anxiously on his lower lip. The adrenaline of the stop had faded, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He had watched the dash cam. He knew Marcus hadn't swerved. He knew the marijuana claim was a fabricated excuse. Reed was witnessing a textbook civil rights violation, but the deeply ingrained precinct culture of the thin blue line kept his mouth firmly shut. A short time later, the cruiser pulled into the dimly lit, pothole-riddled parking lot of the county precinct. It was a brutalist concrete building that looked exactly like what it was. An underfunded relic of a forgotten county, smelling faintly of wet concrete, stale cigarette smoke, and industrial bleach. Mercer hauled Marcus out of the car by the handcuffs, marching him through the heavy glass doors into the harsh, flickering fluorescent light of the intake room. Desk Sergeant Elias Crow, a heavily built man with a graying mustache and a bored expression, looked up from a crossword puzzle. "What do we have here, Mercer?" Crow drawled, setting his pen down. "Bit late for a traffic haul." "Got a live one, Sarge," Mercer boasted, roughly shoving Marcus against the booking counter. "Driving a stolen Mercedes S-Class, though the system hasn't caught up yet. Refused a lawful order, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, the usual garbage." Crow sighed, booting up the booking software. "Empty your pockets, put everything on the counter." Mercer unlocked the handcuffs, finally freeing Marcus's bruised and bleeding wrists. Marcus slowly brought his hands forward, rubbing the deep, raw indentations in his skin. He reached into his pockets, placing his keys, a silver money clip, and his damp leather wallet on the scratched metal counter. Crow flipped open the wallet and pulled out the driver's license. He didn't look at the man standing in front of him. He just aggressively typed the name into the local county database. Because Marcus had never been arrested, never had a warrant, and had zero interactions with the Brimley County Sheriff's Department, nothing flagged. To Crow, the name Marcus Thomas Hale was just another line on a digital spreadsheet. "All right, Marcus," Crow said, his voice flat and mechanical. "Take off your shoelaces, your belt, and empty any jewelry. You're going in holding cell 3 until the magistrate gets in the morning." Marcus calmly unthreaded his leather belt and set it beside his wallet. He looked directly at the desk sergeant, his posture straightening to its full commanding height. Despite his soaked sweatshirt and bruised wrists, he radiated an authority that briefly made Crow falter. "I am legally entitled to a phone call," Marcus stated. His voice was no longer conversational. It was the sharp, resonant tone of a man used to ruling over a courtroom. "I am requesting my constitutionally mandated call immediately. I will not be processed further until that right is accommodated." Mercer laughed loudly, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "Listen to this guy, thinks he's Perry Mason. Give him the phone, Tommy. Let him call his public defender and wake him up. Maybe his mama can scrape together the bail money." Mercer grabbed a heavy corded phone attached to the wall and slammed it onto the counter. "Make it quick. Dial 9 for an outside line. You've got a few minutes before I cut the connection." Marcus picked up the receiver. He didn't look at a directory and he didn't hesitate. He dialed a private, unlisted mobile number, one known only to a select dozen people in the entire state. The phone rang twice. A groggy, deep voice answered on the other end. "Robert Kane." "Robert, it's Marcus Pendleton," Marcus said, his tone icy and precise. "It is 1 a.m. Is everything all right? Is it your wife?" "I'm currently incarcerated at the Brimley County Sheriff's Department," Marcus said, his eyes locking onto Mercer, who was currently mocking Marcus's wet clothes to Officer Reed. "I have been subjected to an illegal stop, an unlawful search without probable cause, and false arrest under the color of law. Furthermore, the arresting officer, a Harlan Mercer, destroyed several highly confidential Supreme Court briefs stored in my vehicle." Dead silence fell over the line. Then the sound of pure, unadulterated panic radiating from the highest law enforcement officer in the state. "What, Brimley County, are you injured, Marcus? Did they hurt you?" "My wrists are lacerated from overly tight restraints, but I am otherwise unharmed," Marcus replied methodically. "Marcus, I am calling Colonel Kane of the State Police right this second," the Attorney General practically shouted, his voice trembling with fury. "I am sending a tactical unit. I will have the FBI Civil Rights Division on the phone in minutes. Do not say another word to those idiots. Just the colonel and the county sheriff will suffice, Robert," Marcus said calmly. "I will await their arrival." Marcus placed the receiver gently back on its cradle. "All done, counselor," Mercer sneered. "Your lawyer tell you to plead guilty?" Marcus said nothing. He simply turned around, walked over to the heavy steel door of holding cell 3, and waited for Crow to unlock it. He stepped inside the damp concrete room, the heavy deadbolt sliding shut with a loud, hollow, metallic clank. Marcus sat down on the cold metal bench, crossed his legs, and watched the ticking clock on the wall. The game was over. The predator just hadn't realized he was in the trap yet. A short time passed in agonizing silence. Officer Mercer sat at his desk, loudly regaling the night dispatcher with an exaggerated tale of his dangerous felony stop. In the corner, Rookie Reed nursed a lukewarm coffee, his stomach twisted into painful knots. At exactly the appointed time, the heavy glass doors of the Brimley County precinct were violently thrown open. The howling wind rushed into the lobby, but no one noticed the weather. They were entirely focused on the men storming through the entrance. Leading the charge was Brimley County Sheriff Victor Langford, wearing a rain jacket hastily zipped over plaid pajama pants. His face was pale and slick with sweat. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. Immediately behind him was Colonel Everett Kane, superintendent of the state police, flanked by 4 heavily armed state troopers in full tactical gear. The troopers fanned out instantly, hands resting on their holstered weapons, locking down the precinct. "Attention!" Desk Sergeant Crow yelled, springing up so fast his chair clattered to the linoleum floor. Mercer leaped up, nearly spilling his coffee. "Sheriff, Colonel, what's going on? We didn't call for backup." Sheriff Langford stormed past Mercer, ignoring him completely. He practically sprinted to the booking counter, grabbing Crow by the uniform collar. "The log!" Langford roared, his voice cracking with sheer panic. "Show me the booking log. Where is he?" "Where is who, sir?" Crow stammered. "The man you brought in a short time ago," Langford yelled, pointing a trembling finger at Mercer. "Where is he?" Mercer stepped forward, a bewildered, cocky smile still plastered on his face. "The guy from the Mercedes? He's in holding cell 3, Sheriff. Refused to comply, resisting arrest. I had to..." Shut your mouth, Langford screamed, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. Shut your absolute miserable mouth. Give me the keys now. Crow scrambled for the heavy iron keyring, handing it over with shaking hands. Colonel Kane stepped forward, his expression carved from stone. I will take those, Sergeant. The entire precinct fell dead silent, save for the hum of the fluorescent lights. Kane walked purposefully toward holding cell 3. He inserted the key, turned the heavy deadbolt, and swung the door wide open. Marcus Hale was sitting exactly where he had been placed, his posture perfectly straight, his eyes unblinking. Colonel Kane, a man who commanded thousands of armed troopers, immediately removed his wide-brimmed Stetson hat and stepped back, standing at rigid attention. Chief Justice Hale, Colonel Kane said, his deep voice echoing in the quiet room. On behalf of the state, I offer my deepest and most profound apologies for this monstrous indignity. The words dropped into the room like a bomb. Chief Justice. The color instantly drained from Mercer's face. His legs turned to lead. He reached out, grabbing the edge of a desk to steady himself as a wave of intense, paralyzing nausea washed over him. The cocky sneer melted away, replaced by the hollow, wide-eyed terror of a man who realized he had just dismantled his own life. In the corner, Officer Reed buried his face in his hands. Marcus stood up slowly. He walked out of the cell, his ruined, wet boots squeaking softly against the floor. He bypassed Colonel Kane and the terrified Sheriff Langford. He stopped directly in front of Harlan Mercer. For a long, agonizing moment, Marcus just looked at him. The silence was suffocating. Mercer's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. Officer Mercer, Marcus finally spoke, his voice quiet, steady, and devastating. Under federal law, the deprivation of rights under color of law is a serious offense. You manufactured probable cause, you executed a false arrest, you assaulted a citizen, and you destroyed classified legal documents belonging to the highest court in this jurisdiction. I didn't, Mercer choked out, tears of sheer panic welling in his eyes. You didn't tell me who you were. My identity is irrelevant, Marcus stated, stepping closer. The Constitution does not apply conditionally based on a man's title. You treated me this way because you believed I was powerless to stop you. You were wrong. Marcus turned to Sheriff Langford, who was sweating profusely. Sheriff, your officer is a danger to the public and a disgrace to his oath. He is fired, Your Honor, Langford said rapidly. Effective immediately, I will file the paperwork before sunrise. Firing him is merely administrative, Marcus corrected coldly. He looked at the superintendent. Colonel, I trust the state police will handle the criminal investigation regarding these civil rights violations. My troopers will place Mr. Mercer under arrest immediately, Your Honor, Kane replied sharply, nodding to the tactical team. He is leaving this precinct in handcuffs tonight. As two troopers grabbed Mercer, reading him his rights, Marcus turned his piercing gaze to Rookie Reed. Reed flinched. Officer Reed, Marcus said, his tone softening only slightly. Complicity in the face of injustice is just as destructive as the injustice itself. Remember this night and ensure it never happens again. It won't, sir, Reed whispered, a single tear escaping. I swear. Marcus retrieved his wallet, keys, and belt from the counter. Colonel, he said wearily, the adrenaline fading to reveal his years, I would very much like a ride home. My wife is likely wondering where her car is. It would be my absolute honor, Chief Justice, Kane replied. As Marcus walked out into the cool, rainy night surrounded by state troopers, the frantic sounds of Mercer's begging echoed behind him. The heavy doors swung shut, leaving only the quiet rhythm of the rain and the unyielding certainty of justice served. If this intense story of absolute justice resonated with you, you know exactly what to do. It's vital to hold those in power accountable. And true stories like this remind us that the law applies equally to everyone, no matter the badge they wear. Please hit that like button to show your support. Share this story with your friends to spread awareness, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below with your thoughts.